It's been a particularly good year in terms of our marriage equality efforts, in terms of our voter ID case, in terms of our I Heart Boobies case. We've had immigrants' rights victories. It's really run the gamut. It's been a really strong year for the ACLU of Pennsylvania.
We are trying to hold local police departments accountable when they make a mistake and actually pick up a U.S. citizen and then they end up getting thrown in jail. Angie was with a friend who, in fact, was undocumented. She didn't realize that the individual was undocumented.
And I was with my friend Joel. He's from Honduras, and we had just exited a grocery store.
And as they're leaving, they are pulled over by a police officer because apparently she hasn't turned on her headlights. It is dusk. It was not an inappropriate stop. It's okay for the police officer to say, hey, ma'am, you should turn on your lights. But he didn't do that. In fact, he starts aggressively questioning Angie and her passenger.
He asked for my information, which I had everything. And as soon as he saw my friend, he asked my friend for an ID. And my friend did not have an ID.
It turns out that both of them end up getting taken to jail on suspicion that they are undocumented immigrants, even though Angie Devia very clearly told the police officer that she is in this country lawfully, and she spent the night in jail, which is really a pretty horrible thing to happen to an individual.
I had never dealt with something like that ever because where I come from is mainly Hispanics, so I had never dealt with racism before.
Much of the ACLU's work is animated by an underlying racism. Like when you look at what happened to Dennis Henderson, here's a community advocate, a leader in the city who is at a community empowerment meeting to talk about this rift between the police and the African American communities here in Pittsburgh, and he ends up getting brutalized by the Pittsburgh police.
I was falsely arrested and detained basically by an officer who just acted out of his own discretion to profiling me and just detaining me for no reason.
He has long been telling his students, many of whom are minorities living in the affected communities, that you gotta be respectful of the police.
So I've been doing this for years and trying to get the students to trust our system and how our system works.
And here he is, a victim of police misconduct, and it was extremely embarrassing for him in front of his students.
When I walked in last year, one of those students that's always been borderline as far as believing this, he was like, see, Mr. Henderson, all the stuff you teach us and you still got slammed.
We are hoping to use the litigation in order to force some operational changes in how the city of Pittsburgh operates.
And that's ultimately what I hope to see, is that, you know, some way, somehow, we could find a way to have officers treat everybody with the same amount of respect and dignity.
We hear about these violations, and we are in a position to be able to fix them. Kathleen Dolan, for instance, was desperate, and she's about to be evicted.
I made 4 911 calls to Mount Oliver Police Department, which is in Pittsburgh, PA. They considered my address as a nuisance property.
They passed these laws that say if the police are called to the premises 3 times within X period of time, the landlord has to evict this individual.
So they contacted my landlord and they gave my landlord an eviction notice.
The problem with that is that people have police calls for different reasons. Sometimes people are exercising their First Amendment right to petition the government for help. So if you've got an intruder in your house, you're going to call the police. If you are a domestic violence victim, you are going to call the police. But that counts as a strike.
The reason why I kept on calling the police is because my abuser kept on violating me.
And to punish somebody by evicting them from the place they live even though there's no proof that they've done anything wrong, is a real problem. And it's especially a problem for people like Kathleen Dolan, who are domestic violence victims.
It could have caused a lot more problems. It jeopardized my recovery and everything else.
We moved on it immediately and got a letter out and got everything slowed down that same day. And since then, we have convinced Mount Oliver not only to rescind the notice, but they have repealed their disruptive properties ordinance. So, it was a good day's work.
I'm not evicted, and if it wasn't for ACLU, I would have relapsed. I would have been done. They actually saved my life. They really did.
I think it's vitally important for this organization to be there to help people in the community. On the other hand, sometimes we will look to set up a case for a challenge. A good example of that would be the freedom to marry for same-sex couples. And one of the things we were looking for in our dozen couples for the Whitewood versus Wolf case is people who had stories that were representative of all of those issues that couples go through.
I wanted all the same things that I wanted if I was going to be with a man. I wanted to get married, we wanted to have a family and all that kind of thing. So I think to some extent we fit that kind of Ozzie and Harriet kind of family portrait.
You look at this couple and you say, gosh, there are like so many straight couples that we know who are married. Why can't these two, who obviously love each other, who have made that profound commitment, who have love and family, why can't they get married?
So we went from a holy union in '93 to a civil union in 2001 to a legally married in October
Maryland.
13.
Yeah. And then on May 20th, the state of Pennsylvania recognizes now
Quite exciting.
our marriage in Maryland. So we're official.
We don't have to do it again.
It's important for straight couples too, because it tells them that these other couples are every bit as good as you are, and they have the same legal protections as anybody else.
And after having conversations with Vic, it was like, wow, yeah, this isn't just our rights. It's not just Deb and Susan's rights. It's the rights of an entire population of people in Pennsylvania.
If somebody had told any of the lawyers in this case, even a year ago, that we would have freedom to marry in Pennsylvania by 2014, we would have said, you're crazy.
May 20th was definitely a historic day for everybody living here in Pennsylvania. And our family was, just ecstatic to be a part of that.
But for us to actually achieve equality in the year 2014 was beyond any of our wildest dreams.
If we were able to find a way to let more people know about the great work that the ACLU is doing, they would be like me. They would be like, wow, yeah, they're protecting my rights too, even though I don't know about it.
Just as we've been successful here in Pennsylvania on the issue of marriage equality and other LGBT initiatives, we've seen a reverse in terms of progress when it comes to a woman's right to choose. And so we're prioritizing that as an area that we want to work on. We want to make sure that, as in Philadelphia, local police departments are refusing to work with the federal government to enforce immigration laws. They do so frequently in a way that is targeting people on the color of their skin or their perceived national origin. That's unacceptable. The over-policing of communities of color, particularly African-American communities, continues, and we're going to be challenging that. We're going to challenge over-incarceration. We're going to challenge the lack of an adequate indigent defense system for citizens of Pennsylvania. There's a lot more to be done. We had a successful year, but we're not done.